Hello, everyone. Andy Goldberg here. Welcome back to the Founders Chair podcast. Very pleased to have as my guest today Kevin Hollister, who's the founder and managing director of the company Guide. Kevin, welcome to the Founders Chair.
Oh, thanks very much for inviting me. It's really good to come on here and discuss things with you.
Well, I'm very excited to hear your story. Can we start off, Kevin? Just if you can tell us a little bit about you personally, where you're from, family, hobbies, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. Originally, I'm from Liverpool, and then I just outside Liverpool, and then I grew up most of my life in London. Moved to Glasgow about 20 years ago now. So I'm a kind of I don't know if quite an adopted Scot yet, but I'd like to think so. Um, Married to two children, both with Glaswegian accents, which is quite funny when you don't have one yourself. Kind of interests. I'm interested in anything kind of sports-wise, football, snowboarding, golf, anything I can kind of try to do. Well, that's getting harder as you get older.
Yeah. Yeah, my kids have a Glasgow accent as well, which
Yeah.
which makes me the novelty. Like their friends are always like, "Ah, your dad's American. That's so cool." But I don't know if you get the same. Oh, your dad's from Liverpool. That's so cool.
Oh, no one ever tell I'm from there. It's more of a Cockney accent, I suppose I've got still.
That's true. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Tell us a little. Tell us the story about how the business came about in the first place, and along with that, at what point did you feel you had the confidence to be a business owner?
Yeah, so I was working as an actuary. I worked for an actuary for many years, pensions actuary, in the pensions world. And I mean, it's about a decade ago now. There was something that fundamentally changed in pensions, in that pensions freedoms, and people could take their pots of money alongside everything else they had, however they wanted to. And advice for people wasn't made compulsory if they were to do this. And it was probably the right thing to do that advice wasn't made compulsory. It wasn't the capacity in the advisor space to provide advice to everyone. And, if people were able to do things on their own, they should be able to do that. Philosophically, it's their money, and it was the right thing to do to give them complete freedom over it. But I kind of realized that if people didn't get advice, there's going to be a lot of people who need to deal with what is essentially a really kind of difficult subject. When you're building up money, it doesn't really make too much of a difference if the markets fall and so forth while you're doing so, because you're paying in extra money at a time when markets are low. But when you come to decumulating money or taking money out, there's a lot more to think about investment. You've also got to have a sustainable amount that you take out, a sustainable withdrawal rate, and then plus nobody knows how long they're going to live. You need to factor in a kind of estimate of that as well. And people have lots of things to use in retirement. So they might have an old final salary pension scheme. Virtually everyone's got the state pension. Might do a bit of part-time work. They have savings outside of pensions, such as ISAs and so forth, bank money in their bank accounts. A lot of people have equity in their homes as well. That's kind of, one of the largest sources of wealth that people have. So for us, we could see that there was possibly a need to provide some help and assistance to people to kind of put together everything they've got to try to get them what they want on a sort of tax efficient basis, and to help them with that planning and give them the reassurance. I mean, one of the things that people say to us a lot is gives me the reassurance that I've got enough to be expected to last, because it's a really big mind change set from when you go to building up money. So you've got all this money, assets, and income that you might have in retirement. To all of a sudden you start to actually take it down and wondering how long it's going to last you for. Is it going to be enough, and so forth.
So you saw an opportunity in the market to provide information that people were struggling to get, or good advice that people were kind of struggling to get. So you had this idea to start up a service online, a free service, or was it a paid for thing? Like
Yeah,
what?
so I suppose, so first of all, we had two questions to answer. There was nothing that had really kind of been built like this. So the first question was, is there going to be any demand for this, and can we attract people to using it? So our service is completely free, but we didn't know if if people would want this. We had a hunch that they would, but we quickly found out that there was lots of people searching online for help around their pensions, especially in the period, they're kind of 50 plus and they're seeing when the end of their working life may be, and they're looking towards, right, okay, have I got enough, or what do I need to do to have enough to live on in retirement? We can see there was about 100,000 searches a month on Google for all of these type of terms that people were needing help on. They didn't even include terms like advice or provider or typical kind of pension terms that you would expect. It was more just around, can I retire at 60 with a pot of X amount of money? How much money do I need for a comfortable retirement? All of this type of stuff. Where can I find a pension calculator? So we could quickly see that we could attract like 10,000 users a month through pay per click and so forth, really, really quite easily, and really it didn't cost us much money at all to do that. So we could see that there was a demand for it. So that was question one. And then question two was, could people use it on their own? Because if they couldn't, it was worthless. And as an actuary, I made it way too complicated, first of all. And we had about a 2% completion rate from people who got there to people who could get to the end on about a 7-step journey. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes to do. So we did about a year of work looking at um, where people were struggling, where they dropped out, what additional information we could give them to make the journey easier. And we've gone from that 2% completion rate to, if I looked at it now, it's between 50 to 60% of people who start the journey get to the end.
Mm.
Which is, for a 7-step journey, it's going to take you 5 to 10 minutes, is a pretty good completion rate. So they were the first two questions we had to ask. Is there a demand, and can people do it on their own? And then the third one, which we didn't have a clue with when we've kind of first started, I suppose we were honest, is well, this is all really good, and we were starting to get some really good feedback and so forth. But how do we actually kind of support ourselves in doing this? How can we make it, commercially viable? Because I was still working as an actuary at the time, which was fine. I didn't need an income or so forth from this. But if I was gonna give up my role and try to launch this as a business, we needed, um, a commercial direction on how we were going to monetize it effectively.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about what it's turned into. Tell us about the company now. How is it structured? Who and where are your team, and how do you
Yeah,
operate?
sure. So, I suppose the first route was that kind of commercialization. So we realized quickly that keeping the site for free was perfectly fine. It didn't cost as much money to actually attract users and so forth, and we could do that. And what that gave us was a really good, I suppose pitch isn't the right word, but it almost gave you the kind of perfect pitch document to businesses who might want to license it, to say, well, look at all the statistics of people that are coming through here. There's clearly a demand for this. People can use it on their own. And look at the kind of reviews that we get. People really like what we're doing. So why don't you take a licensed version for your, for your entity? And that could be advisors, providers, insurers, all different kind of types of entity that may well find use in this for kind of different reasons. So, once we knew that was the direction we were going in, first of all, then, my sales director came on board with me really kind of quite quickly, and he was really good in terms of, promoting that out to various different entities that may want it. That developer became a kind of technical director and moved forward in terms of one doing all of that sort of white labeling and customization that we would do for various different parties, but also in terms of driving what we'd originally built forward. So to add
Yeah.
more functionality and so forth that people wanted. So that's how things kind of developed. And then we found that there was quite a few people around the pensions industry who had also been thinking in similar ways to us. And, they were quite sort of high profile within the pensions industry and so forth. And they wanted to support us in different ways, be that through kind of investment or through becoming a NED and helping us kind of spread the word of what we were trying to do. So, and open more doors for us in terms of, who we could get to speak to and so forth. So that was a kind of development of things to where we are today. And now we're kind of taking on more development resources. We've had additional sales resource before and so forth as well. So yeah. So that was our kind of journey over the last probably about 3 years or so, with the three of us um, working part time in it around the commercial side, myself doing kind of everything in the middle, and the developer doing all of the kind of technical side of what was needed.
Um, what would you say has been your biggest challenge over the years as you've built this company up, and how did you push through it, or who helped you push through it?
Well, I suppose first of all, I mean, I was an actuary, doing kind of quite technical work, but within a kind of large company environment and so forth, and I had no real idea at all how to run a business and all the different things that that entailed. Um, I've got, I was lucky in a way in that my last two roles within companies, one was in a particular kind of area where we'd built up the proposition of that advice from sort of scratch. So you were kind of building something up within a company. And then the last one was actually they didn't do the kind of work that I did before I arrived there, and kind of building up that side of the business again from scratch. So I was lucky enough to have a bit of insight in terms of kind of trying to do that and bring on sort of clients and so forth, and almost pitching to clients in a way as to this was a good route to go down. But the daily things of raising money for investment, VAT registration, accounting, marketing, all of that type of stuff. I was fairly sort of clueless with first of all when I started, and and I found that you could, I know we've never had any kind of professional marketing. We have some kind of PR and so forth, but um, around kind of digital marketing and stuff. And I literally spent about 3 months, I think it was, just reading everything I could around digital marketing and pay per click, what works, what doesn't, what's the best things to do. And I found that I could kind of teach myself that, over a period of time as the business was kind of just first starting out, which it was kind of obviously helpful, first of all, in sort of saving us costs and so forth for managing to do some of the stuff on our own.
Um, but you see, it seems like you've brought in people that have expertise in all the different aspects of running and growing a business. So it's not
Yeah,
like I can just do it all on my own and I'll figure it out.
Yeah, so some things, obviously, like digital marketing, I just said I learn on my own. Obviously, all of the development side, that's outside my area of expertise, and we needed experts around that, and but also the kind of business to business commercial side. I had limited expertise in that type of thing within a large company. Trying to pitch to businesses when you're a small startup's a completely different thing. And
Hmm.
my commercial director is far more skilled in those kind of areas. And then you have other things as well, like legal, accounting, all of that type of stuff, where you can bring in consultants and as a startup, and there's lots of other kind of startup businesses out there, or businesses that support staff. So I found Seed Legals, for example, really good around the whole kind of legalities of raising money and all the granting options, all of that different type of stuff. We have legal input from someone on a kind of as and when needed basis around our contracts. All of that type of stuff I thought it'd be daunting first of all, but you soon realise, like as you say, you can't do everything, can you? You can go out to people, and generally there's everything you can find to start up. To support a startup is there, and it's available to you if you look hard enough and find the right kind of outfits that provide that.
I think most startup owners listening to this will be thinking, I don't have the cash to bring somebody else in to, who's got the expertise. I've got to do it all myself because I've got nothing. I'm sleeping on my friend's floor.
Yeah. So I mean, that's definitely. I mean, I didn't take a salary or any type of salary at all for the first, year. I lived off the kind of savings that I had, and tried to do as much of the stuff that I could myself without kind of incurring the costs. But then, once we got a bit more investment and a bit more revenue coming in, we were able to, to effectively bring in some more people to help us with that, who were kind of far more expertise than what I was in, in a lot of those areas.
So, Kevin, what's the next big thing for you and your company? What do the next 1 to 3 years look like in terms of growth and opportunity and challenges?
Yeah, so I mean, for us ourselves, as I say, that we've commercialized the tool by licensing that out to various entities, and we're almost at the point now where our licensing revenue meets all of our fixed costs. So that's kind of been the base that we've always been looking to get to. We've got a fixed cost of a certain amount per year, and then that licensing revenue to effectively meet that. And now, because we're at that point, we're looking to integrate to integrate the tools that we have with actual products. So what we do for people is we build them a plan, a sustainable plan of how they can withdraw their monies and so forth, and everything else they've got. Our next route is to plug that into actual products to make that a reality. So, to take an easy example, you build a sustainable plan with lots of different amounts of money you've got to take from different years. You plug that into a provider, and a provider pays you that plan just like a wage, given what's there. You review it once a year and so forth. But also by knowing how somebody expects to take their money down, any investment manager will tell you, well, if we know how someone expects to take their money, we can devise much better investment strategy for them, or default investment funds for them, than if we simply don't have a clue as to how they're going to take their money. And it's a kind of one size fits all basis, which from kind of recent experience seems to be it doesn't really fit that many people too well, and it could be quite a few issues there. So for us, that is our next push in terms of making the plans that people built with us. And got about 15,000 registered users now. They typically have about 300K or 200 to 300K pension pot. So they're big enough for a viable, sustainable drawdown plan, but they're probably not in that 500,000 plus of people who typically go and pay for advice and pay for ongoing advice and so forth. So we think there's a market out there for those type of people who could manage it on their own, or need to manage it on their own, and not necessarily going for advice, but they need more support and help, and defaults, and making it easy for them to put as easy as possible for them to put make their plans a kind of reality and to last over their lifetime.
From my own personal experience, I found the hardest part of all this was working out what I would need in my retirement. Like you said
Mm.
at the start, nobody knows how long they're going to live. For me, it's, well, I don't know how much money I'm going to need when I'm 80. So
Yeah.
I've got a 30-year personal financial budget. So that'll take me up to when I'm 86.
Mhm.
I don't, how expensive are my meals when I go out to eat when I'm, when you're 80? And I find myself looking at 80-year-olds, like my in-laws or something. How much are they spending to have a decent life? But I guess that's the thing that people need help with. That's what you can help them with.
Yeah, so I mean, you could give people help in that in a couple of ways. So one, and that is one of the hardest things. If you ask somebody, what do you need in retirement? No, people will really struggle to answer that question. But if you give them a grounding and say, this independent study, which is the PLSA standards, has said for a minimum income, you need this amount after tax. For a moderate income, you need this amount, and for a more comfortable income, you need this amount. Now, you can provide those numbers to people, and that gives them a grounding so that they can kind of know, well, I'll be happy to be somewhere between moderate and comfortable. I'll be happy to be somewhere between minimum and moderate, depending on what they're used to and what they've earned before and what their kind of sort of spending is.
Mm.
So that really helps in terms of that initial level. And then you think about the kind of shape of income as well, because like you say, if you look at, I mean, I've sat on the Institute of Actuaries, some of the discussion groups looking at this. If you look at actual kind of retirement spending, and you ignore kind of care costs and health issues, but you just look at normal sort of spending, it will rise in the kind of early years of retirement, maybe up to 75. But then in real terms, it actually starts to fall, or in kind of nominal terms, which kind of flatten out because um, people are just going to be less active. You are naturally going to take less holidays, probably, play less golf, give up your golf membership or whatever, as you
Yeah.
get into those kind of later, and you actually end up spending less money. And then other elements of pension income, like the state pension, actually increase quite a lot year on year. So the money that you need to take from your pots could actually be sort of decreasing each year in those sort of later years. And then if you've only got a certain size pot to last, knowing that kind of information can kind of sort of really help you because you can get a higher starting income with a pot with an income which then goes flat after age 75 than you can with one which increases for life, which you may not necessarily need. You want to look at other kind of scenarios as well. What if I needed some care in later life? What if I live a bit longer than my average? Those type of things, but you can give people a good picture for them to be able to make their own kind of decision. And then it's not a one and done sort of scenario anyway. Add tools, you build your initial plan, and then you can come back and you track it, so forth, over, each year of life. You can come back in 12 months' time, see how it's all expected, see if everything's still expected to work, but also kind of review your spending in the last year and say, I wanted £30,000 after tax or something along those lines. Well, I didn't actually spend that. I only spent 25,000. Or I spent a bit more than that. Therefore I'm going to need to maybe take a bit more than what I expected. And does that still give me a sustainable plan? So yeah, that tracking and reviewing is really kind of quite crucial, I think, for people.
Yeah, because I don't have to go back and get a job after I've retired.
Yeah, yeah,
You don't
exactly.
overspend, right? Well, I can see why people. I mean, there is more to it, right? You're making it sound simple, but there's a lot of things to consider, which is what your service, I guess, helps people kind of make sense of it all. So, I'm going to need to pay it a visit, I think, and work it out. But what advice have you got, Kevin, for other people who are thinking about going out on their own in business or who have just started going out on their own in business? What advice would you give them based on your own learning and experience?
Yeah, so I mean, I found, uh, for ourselves, I found the kind of the tax support that you obviously get, well, not yourself personally, but people who may be willing to invest in you, is really quite good from the government in terms of like being able to raise money on SEIS or EIS and so forth. And the tax incentives that gives potential investors is something that's really good. So, you should definitely look at getting the kind of advanced approval for those type of things if you envisage that you are going to have to raise money. And then the next point I would say is it doesn't matter what you think, and it doesn't matter what potentially other experts think. What matters is what the end user thinks. For us, I've thought, I thought some things would go down really, really well. They haven't worked well at all with people, or some other things seem to have really resonated with people, which I didn't think was actually going to be the case. So you really do need to test it with actually a live audience in the demographic that you're aiming to. And then finally, if something isn't working well, it's fine to obviously make mistakes, and you will do, especially if you're starting up something new. You're not going to get everything right, but it's to effectively cut the things that aren't working well quickly before they end up costing too much money, and you bury more and more money into it, thinking, "Oh, this is going to work. This is going to work." If you don't think that that's going to happen straight on, it's really best to cut your losses and look at something, look at a different kind of potential route or pivot or whatever the term is. But yeah.
Yeah. So what you're saying is don't get too emotionally connected to your own idea. The marketplace will tell you what's a good idea.
Oh, exactly, exactly. Yeah, like I say, it doesn't matter what you think's a good idea. It's what matters what everybody else thinks is a good idea and is valuable to them. Yeah.
Well, that's a good note to end on. We've come to the end of the interview, Kevin. It's flown by, but it's been a real pleasure. finding out about your company and about your start on this journey. And it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, and some terrific learnings, I think, for the people that are going to listen in on this. So thank you very much.
No, thanks very much for inviting us again. It's been really good.
Well, this has been the Founders Chair podcast. I've been speaking with Kevin Hollister from Guide, and I want to have a big thank you to all of our viewers for sticking with us week in and week out. And we look forward to seeing you on the Founders Chair podcast again. But once again, Kevin, thanks so much.
Thank you.